But however, if they do interfere, we can also discuss them. And particularly when I look at this group, AFMOC, AFM On Campus, it's a group that is very close to my heart. So sometimes it's difficult for me to say no to some of your requests, even though I may be very busy many times. Why? Because we have a history. And that history is very solid. That history is very foundational. And that history is quite absolute. Before all other universities were opened, I'm talking about in Zimbabwe, because sometimes you may think that before all other universities closed, I'm talking about the national grid, here in Zimbabwe, no. This university was the only university known to be the University of Zimbabwe, which started as a University of the Federation of Rhodesia and Nyasaland. For those of you who lived way back before, in the BCs, the BC period before Chitsika. So those of us who have been there, we know they established a radio station in Lusaka, Zambia, then established a university here in Zimbabwe, and it was because the radio station was established in Lusaka. So when the federation was terminated, we benefited with this institution. But however, this institution operated for quite a while without a proper spiritual guidance as such, until I would say when the real spiritual formation of the university started was in 1985, when the Zimbabwe Council of Churches seconded to this university a senior chaplain who would really function in ecumenizing Christian activity on this campus. And this was the Reverend Bishop Sebastian Bakare. And when he took over, being seconded by the Zimbabwe Council of Churches, and they also put up a handsome amount of money for the salary to kickstart, and then the university later on took over from him. The Reverend Bakare, who came from an Anglican persuasion, decided that he cannot handle this function alone. So he chose his lieutenants. And the first person that he chose to work with him in this venture was the one speaking to you now. So I came onto the chaplaincy officially in 1985. And we operated in that space, just covering all Christian denominations, and particularly the Christian Union was the more active front of Pentecostalism. Of course, we had other than Pentecostal forums. But then, as we proceeded with this, I just began to think in my mind, I am an AFM ordained pastor. Now, being an AFM ordained pastor, do I have any AFM students on campus? But of course, having participated in the registrations, especially the chaplaincy form and other related issues, I began to go on a hunt in 1989 for any students who came from the AFM, and I identified quite a lump sum of them. And among them, of course, was Lovejoy Chabata, Tawana Nyambirai, and a few others. That was the birth of AFM On Campus in 1989. And we elected, the first chairperson was Lovejoy Chabata, and also Vanatawana Nyambirai. I think he was the deputy, I'm not sure, but he was part of the committee. I'm talking about those who are prominent that may be known to you. And then we began to operate. Because we have been looking for such covering. But right now we're coming with the limelight of recognition. And you know, the first AGM we ever had, we invited all AFM churches in the greater Harare area, and it was a resounding all-day Saturday event to inaugurate the first committee. Do you know we filled up to capacity the Great Hall? And it was a dynamic launch. And I tell you, it was really phenomenal. And from then we began to move on. I was involved on a weekly basis sometimes, or even more frequently than the weekly basis. But eventually, as the group began to grow and began to mature and so forth, as we grew leadership and realized that now I can begin to win the group. So my participation became a bit peripheral, but still involved, and we opened up the platform to many other pastors, particularly AFM pastors, and also those of Pentecostal persuasion elsewhere who would come and preach to this group. So our history is something that can never be underwritten. It's a great history, just like the history of the church itself, the AFM. But then